define it. If I'm a producer working on a song, what is my role?
That really depends on the genre of music. So, for example, my brother's band, they were like a screamo rock band, right? And so they wrote, lyrics, the melody, they wrote the compositions themselves. So the producer in that case, he would mainly record things, record the tracks and then mix them and then, maybe make some suggestions about like, oh, maybe you guys should, sing it this way or sing it that way.
Right.
So in that case, they didn't get any songwriting, credit because they were just mainly putting it together. Whereas in like urban music, like, hip hop, R&B, a lot of times the producer is also a songwriter as well.
Sure.
So it really depends on the genre and the contributions of the producer, and and that defines the role basically.
Okay. And the reason why I was asking that question about, defining the producer is I'm trying to figure out if I believe that I'm a producer and someone says, hey, you know what, we want you to come in and help produce this track or produce this album. How do I create an agreement? Like, what is the starting point for figuring out how am I getting paid? What am I getting paid? What are the percentages? What are these standards? Any insight from a high level? Of course, I know this can be very detailed based off of what you mentioned, but what guidance can you offer in that regard?
Mainly it's, figuring out, okay, are you going to get an advance? Like, are you going to get paid a producer's advance? Usually it depends. If you're an accomplished producer, you'll get, a higher advance, of course. And also if it's an all-in advance, meaning like, are you going to, for example, have to pay all the expenses out of that money? So let's say they give you $100,000 for this to produce this album, but that's all in advance. So that means you have to pay for the studio time and the musicians and so forth. They're just giving you a chunk of money and saying, hey, pay, we want you to pay, take care of everything. Now, if you're an established producer, then they know you and they can rely on you. Then that's not usually gonna be a problem. Other times it's more like, and actually, honestly, that's usually how it is because nowadays, especially, most people create music on their laptops, right? So, generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of, you don't have to go to a huge studio just to write, make beats anymore. So that's usually the case. So what the advance is, also what's your producer royalty on the back end? Usually, like I said, it's 3 to 5% of PPD, or 4% is kind of the going rate right now. PPD is a published price to dealer, which is the wholesale price. And so this is going to get a little bit complicated, but usually what happens is the artist is allocated, let's say they're signed to a record label, they're allocated a certain number of points on the record, a percentage point. So let's say they get 20% of, whatever, of artist royalty on the back end from record sales. Usually what happens is they give some of those points to the producer, right? So they'll say, so that's where those 4% of the producer's points come from. So in effect, what happens is the record label allocates 20 points to the artist, and then they give another 4 points from that 20 to the producer. So basically, the artist is getting 16 points, and the producer is getting 4 points. So that's kind of how you get royalties on the back end on the producing side. Now, remember way back earlier in the podcast, I don't want to make it too confusing, but remember I said if an artist self-releases something, the artist is getting 20% of whatever the artist makes from releasing the album themselves, right?
Right.
So if you look at this structure I just described right now, the artist has 20 points, they give 4 points to the producer. The artist the producer in that case is getting 20% of what the artist is getting. So it all kind of evens out. It's all sort of set up so that basically the producer is going to get 20% of what the artist makes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. All right.
I know a lot of numbers and stuff there, but it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
no, this is good information because again, these are things that most of us we don't know about, we never heard of, and sometimes I heard someone say, "You don't know what you don't know," and so even you bringing these things up allows us to go and dig and research more about this, especially for those who want to be producers and want to produce at a high level. Again, Kamal is giving us some insight about how this works. And again, you're going to get a lot more information by grabbing the book, The Straightforward Guide to the Music Biz. And I keep saying this over and over again, the name of the book, because I really believe it's a great resource. So, most certainly Kamal's going pretty quickly here, but you can dive deeper into what he's saying by simply grabbing the book. A small investment in your music career, you'll pay far more for a plug-in. So well worth the investment. Kamal, one more subject before we get out of here today, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Publishing. You hear that term a lot in the music business and things like that. For those who are not familiar with publishing or having a publisher or working with a publisher, what does that mean for a songwriter or a music creator?
Sure, yeah. So basically a music publisher, they're basically a company that works on behalf of the songwriter to license the compositions and collect royalties, basically. Now, if you're not signed to a publisher, you should create your own publishing company. So because, for example, what happens is when you sign up with ASCAP, which is one of the PROs that collects radio airplay royalties, that distributes radio airplay royalties, what they do is they will pay publishers and songwriters directly. So let's say, for example, I'm a songwriter, I write a composition, and I'm a member of ASCAP, and I register my composition with ASCAP. What happens is, like, let's say that my composition makes $100,000 from radio airplay, and then you pay it out. What they're going to do is they're going to pay $50,000 of that to me as the songwriter, and they're going to pay the other $50,000 to my publisher. Now, in order to get that publisher share, I have to have some entity on, some business like on file with them to receive that money. So what a lot of songwriters do is they'll say, okay, I'm Kamal Moo, I'm going to do a DBA, what's called a doing business as. So I'm starting like Moo Music Publishing or whatever. That's my publishing company that exists for the purposes of accepting, the money from ASCAP. So that's why I recommend people, they should start their own, publishing company if they're an independent songwriter, and just to make sure that they receive all the money that they're entitled to.
I see. Okay, so you're saying there's two sides of it. There's the side that the publishing company collects whenever a song is played, like on radio through like the performing rights organizations, ASCAP, CSAC, or BMI. And then there's the other side where the songwriter also gets paid a cut. And if I have both entities, I can get 100% of the money from the publishing side as a publishing company, and also 100% of the songwriter's shares. Is that correct?
Yep. And BMI is a little bit different because if you're like a self-published songwriter, they don't require you to have a publishing company on file with them. I still say it's a good idea to have one for other reasons because, for example, when you get mechanical royalties from Harry Fox, which is they do compulsory mechanical licenses, or you're granting licenses, it's good to have a dedicated, publishing entity sort of on file out there. So, so BMI allows you to not, have a publisher, but I kind of still say it's a good idea to have one.
Got it. Okay. And with that, and I promise this is a final question here. So let's say I'm working with a major label, right? Let's say I get signed with a major label. I'm writing a song for one of their artists. Do I get to have the publishing company with the major label? Meaning, can I have, my business Inc. as a publisher, and then also I get my money as a songwriter for that song with that major label? How does that work?
Yeah, so what happens is, let's say you're a successful songwriter, you're probably going to start your own music publishing entity, LLC or corporation, and that would be registered with ASCAP or BMI as your publisher. And then any checks that are owed to you from the major label that would go to your publishing company. Okay. And then at some point, what you probably would do is sign an administration deal with a large publisher like Warner Chappell, Universal Music Publishing. And what they will do is they will administer the rights to your song on behalf of your company. And so they would kind of represent your company and go out there and do all the accounting and collect the royalties and all that stuff, do all the nitty gritty stuff to make sure you get paid on the publishing side.
Awesome. Great. Makes sense. Well, hey, Kamal, man, I appreciate your time today. And today we've heard quite a bit. I know we've jumped around to a lot of different subjects, but I know that these are subjects that are most certainly important to those who are listening. Again, today we've been on with Kamal Moo. He is the author of The Straightforward Guide to the Music Biz. Check it out on Amazon. It is an amazing investment in your career. And getting information firsthand from an entertainment lawyer who's doing this at a very high level. I mean, come on. There's no better way to spend your money. Kamal, before we get out of here, any parting words or advice for us?
I'd say, I think that, just as you said, I think it's really important for artists to really educate themselves. And I'm a big advocate of that. I actually teach the music publishing course at my old law school, Southwestern Law School. I'm actually teaching again this spring. And I think it's just super important to get this knowledge. And even if you don't have to become an expert, but I think just having at least a general overview is really going to be to your benefit as an artist, as a songwriter. And I think, I'm glad that people like you do these kind of podcasts, because I think it's really important to get this knowledge out there, because these deals don't have to be terrible for the artist. They can be better. It's just a matter of understanding them and knowing, how to make them better.
Awesome. Great advice, man. Great having you on today. And again, we so appreciate your insight and knowledge. Beyond the book, is there anywhere else that we can follow you? Do you have any social media handles?
Yeah, if you go to my website, my author website, kamalandrew.com, that has the links to my social media. That's KAMALANDREW.com. They can follow me on there. And of course, if people have questions, they can always reach out to me directly. I'm pretty accessible. I mean, a lot of my, I work with a lot of indie musicians. So if anyone needs a contract out there, feel free to reach out if you need any, information, or just, need to, protect yourself.
Awesome. Guys, you heard it directly from the man himself, Kamal Moo, an amazing mind when it comes to legal matters for the entertainment business. I mean, why wouldn't you take him up on this, especially if you're at the point where you really need that legal advice and counsel? You've already got a preview as to what he can do. Let him help you take you to the next level in your career. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Kamal Moo, thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
For sure.
$10